Now we return to our coverage of former President Trump's arraignment on 34 felony charges, all related to hush money paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now joining us, we have a panel: Fox 26 senior legal analyst Chris Tritico, law professor Craig Jackson from the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. We also have Marcus Davis, who is the host of Fish Grits and Politics. And we have political strategist, that is, Vlad Davidic. And we're going to start with Chris. So, Chris, tell me, what do you think about the indictment being unsealed and what these charges actually mean?
So, this is a very interesting indictment. We got all these counts that are typically misdemeanors in New York, and the district attorney has bootstrapped them under New York law into a felony, into felonies, 34 felonies. Under New York law, if you commit these what are typically election code violations, but if you do them with the intent to commit fraud, then you can make them into a felony, a first-degree felony in New York. He's using federal election law to make that fraud connection to make them into this first-degree felony. He doesn't have jurisdiction over federal election law, and he's not prosecuting that, but saying by hiding that federal, the Stormy Daniels payment and these things that would have been federal violations, he's making that into the felony. Very difficult case for him to make.
All right, yeah, it's good to understand what these charges exactly are. Now, Professor Jackson, do you think that these charges will hold up constitutionally?
Well, these are state charges. So there really isn't, from a constitutional standpoint, a federal constitutional issue. The states have the power to enact their own criminal laws, and this is, despite the nature of the case, this is a state case, a trial, at state court, and they will follow state criminal statutes as well as the state constitution.
And Vlad, I was going to ask you, will this case, do you think, help or hurt Donald Trump? I know that's been a big question asked by many experts.
Sure, it's going to have probably a dual effect. It's going to hurt him in the eyes of a lot of people who may have been looking at candidates for the upcoming election, especially independents or leaners who could go one way or the other. But it's certainly going to help reinforce that perception among strong, committed conservatives and Republicans that he's under attack by the far left, by the Democrats, and that could garner him additional support. We're still a long way away from the primary. We're still a long way from the election. So it's still very interesting to see how it's going to play out.
And when you saw the Trump supporters versus those who were anti, did you see more, or what are you hearing from those on either side?
Well, look, what we were seeing was a slow but steady erosion of support for Trump after he left office, and other candidates were emerging as potential viable nominees for 2024. Certainly we're going to have a lot of interesting choices and possibly better choices. But this has really served to catalyze a lot of the support on the right for a candidate who is deeply flawed, but Republicans have identified that he's fighting against the far left, fighting against the Democrats, and they're shifting their support to him as a show of support against that agenda.
And Marcus, wanted to ask you, what's your take? Obviously a lot different from Vlad here on what's going on.
My take is make arresting great again. Where's the MAGA, right? We had an arrest. There was no perp walk. There were no handcuffs. There was no mug shot. None of the things that typically go along with an arrest. Privileges for the privileged. I understand he's the former president, but if you commit a crime, then you got to do the time. I don't know if he'll do time according to the attorneys over here. He may or may not. But the real story is whether or not this man committed a crime and whether or not he's going to pay for the crime that he's committed. There's a lot of talk about arresting a former president and indicting a former president, and that stuff is irrelevant. It's no point to brag about that we've never arrested a president in the United States of America or indicted, because surely there are some that you know, starting with Nixon, probably should have gone to jail. So I just think that this needs to play out the way it needs to play out. I don't think partisan politics needs to be involved in it as much as they say it is. Let's just see what the law says. Let's see what the judge says.
All right. Well, did any of you want to say anything else before we go?
So I don't think that there'll be any, even if he's convicted, there's not going to be any jail time in this case.
Okay.
We've got 2 other cases that
Right.
may be indicted. No jail time in this case at all.
Yeah, I think everybody can agree on that.
And I would only say that it's unfortunate that we've descended to this level. It's just something reminiscent of what happens in third world dictatorships, where the party in power chooses that opportunity to put their opponents in jail or to persecute their families. And it should never have come to this, but unfortunately choices were made that led to it, and we have to see how it resolves out.
Yeah, choices on both sides. Choices by the Democrats, choices by the Republicans, and choices that the candidate Trump, that President Trump actually made himself. And, you know, sometimes you make bad choices, bad things come to you.
And we also have a couple of areas of untraveled territory, because we have primaries coming up and have an election. And federal cases tend to go quickly. State cases don't necessarily go that quickly.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I don't. If this goes to trial, it probably won't be before the primaries.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here this evening.